About elected officials in your ranks here. But let me just start by saying, Mark, I can assure you your mother's extremely proud, and she probably is enjoying this day as much as you are and as much as this crowd is. So and I wasn't sure what I was going to say about Lee when I was thinking about coming up here, and then yesterday I got redirected. I left Fort Lauderdale, went to Charlotte. I was supposed to come to Kansas City, and they sent me to Washington, D.C. in order to catch a flight into Kansas City late last night. At the time that was happening, I thought this is kind of crazy that I'm having to go to Washington, D.C. to get to Kansas City to introduce Lee Feldman. Then I realized that there was a purpose in that. Because as I sat on the runway in Washington, D.C., and I looked at the Capitol, and as I sat in the airport and talked to all these people who were in our national government, I realized that that's the dysfunctional side of government. That is dysfunctionality at its finest. And then I came here this morning and I listened to Mark, and I listened to some of these other city managers get up and speak, and Pat, and you realize the contrast. In D.C., it's dysfunctional. In Kansas City, there's a focus on functionality. Everything you do as professionals is to make city government work, to make it function for the benefit of the people, to make it function for the benefit of all the neighbors, the constituents. So I hope you appreciate that contrast. Look at a collection of public servants that are doing it the right way. And as you look at the theme, this celebration of service this morning, and you talk about people in 40 and 45 years and 50 years of service, you realize that you can do it the right way. You can serve the public and function and do it in the proper manner, do it ethically, professionally, always striving for excellence. I want to recognize one of my colleagues who joined me here. He is a gentleman that has over 40 years in public service, 35 on our police department. The last 6 is our chief of police, and then he joined me on our city commission in 2009 and has now served 7 years on the commission. So he probably would have qualified for one of your 40-year awards or almost 45-year awards. But that's our city commissioner, Bruce Roberts. Bruce, thank you for joining us today. Let me start just by saying one thing. Thank you to all of you. You know, there are not elected officials here to thank you. There are not constituents here and neighbors and children that actually can come here and say thank you. But when you realize what you accomplish day in and day out, what you achieve on behalf of our communities, let me be the one to express on behalf of the mayors, the council members, the city commissioners, a very sincere thank you for what you all do for our communities and for our cities. You know, we're at a crossroads in America in terms of public trust and confidence. We're at a crossroads where people are losing trust and confidence. It's eroding. And as I listen to you all, I realize that public trust and confidence is not misplaced. It just needs, the focus needs to shift, that we all recognize people like you who deserve the public trust and confidence, but more importantly, have earned the public trust and confidence. And I say all this because this is a reflection of the city manager that I'll be introducing shortly. This is a gentleman that has truly earned public trust and confidence, but I think more importantly for his profession, has also earned the private trust and confidence of Bruce and myself and our city commission. It's a balancing act that you have to perform. You've got to deal with all of the city employees, all the county employees. You got to deal with all the members of the public, and at the end of the day, you still got to be able to count to a majority of your council or commission. And it's a very difficult job and a difficult balancing act. But I can tell you, on days like today, when you get elevated to the position of president, on days like today when you recognize your stars, you realize it's all worth it. You are serving this country in a great way. Let me just briefly mention Lee in terms of his family. This is a guy that came to Fort Lauderdale 5 years ago. He's got a beautiful wife, Stacy, here this morning with us. I don't know if she knew what he was getting into when he came down to the big city of Fort Lauderdale to become city manager. He's got his daughter, Caitlin, here also, and it's wonderful to have both of them with us for this. You know, Lee's a gentleman that served in North Miami Beach and then served as a city manager in North Miami and in Palm Bay. But 5 years ago, we were out doing a nationwide search for a city manager. We took over 100 names, and something about Lee stood out. And at this time, I can tell you, we are so pleased, so proud that we elevated him to that city manager position, that we hired him. He has spent 5 years turning Fort Lauderdale around. And people ask me to describe Lee. I say, well, one, I used to say he had a good sense of humor. But after the last 12 hours with Lee, I haven't seen any sense of humor at all, Lee. I think you're a little nervous about this elevation or something, but he normally has a very good sense of humor. The problem is he's got about the same 8 jokes on his phone, and he forgets that he's only dealing with 5 commissioners, so it just kind of rotates through us, these jokes. But don't get him started on those. But here's a guy that has, as I look out here, has the same balance you all have. Incredibly hardworking, very, very bright, intelligent, tremendous multitasker. People ask me, what's a good, successful city manager do? I say they multitask better than anybody. You know, we're joined here today by the head of our Florida League of Cities, Mike Siddig. I saw Mike out here. Where's Mike? I just saw Mike. Oh, he's back there. Mike, thank you for joining us. Mike will tell you, Lee multitasks better than anybody I've ever seen. Because as he does what we ask him to do at the city, he then is doing it at the League of Cities, he's doing it at the FEMA board, and he's doing it at the ICMA. Just with all that, he's staying happily married, he's somehow raising a family, and he's somehow keeping track of all that. But I think the best quality that Lee has, in addition to that multitasking, the single best quality that he has is he knows how to build community. That's a term we throw around. But I think as I look out in this room, and as I met people earlier today, and many of you I've met for a second or third time, you all build community. At the end of the day, what you do as city managers, what we do by entrusting you with our city government, we set policy, but you implement it. You build community. And you do it in such an effective way that it really makes us elected officials look good. And oftentimes that's hard, because we have our own flaws and defects and mistakes that we make on a daily basis. But with a strong city manager form of government, with a good professional city manager, we can all build community. And we can build it to where we elevate a city to where we are in Fort Lauderdale today. That would not have happened with anybody but Lee Feldman, a tremendous community builder, a tremendous judge of character, and I'm proud, privileged, and honored to tell you he's now become a great friend. And with that, I will introduce to you your next president of the International City Managers Association, my good friend, and I think the best damn city manager anywhere in this country, Lee Feldman.
Thank you, Mayor Seiler, and now I am proud to present my good friend and colleague, ICMA President for 2016-17, Lee Feldman, City Manager, Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Wow. Okay. Pat, you've had a great year, and somehow I get the hard acts to follow. I get hard act to follow with Pat, hard act to follow with Mark, hard act to follow with my mayor. So here it goes. So Madam President, members of the board, fellow ICMA members, and our honored guests, good morning. First, let me formally thank my mayor, Jack Seiler, for those awesome remarks. I mean, it's truly inspirational to me when he doesn't talk just about me at an introduction, but talks about all of us and the difference that you're making back home. I have to tell you that the last 5 years that I have spent working in the city of Fort Lauderdale has truly been the pinnacle of my career. It's a great city, it's exciting times, it's led by a great mayor with a great city commission. And let me too recognize Bruce Roberts, one of our city commissioners, that came here and participated in our conference all week. I'm really, truly blessed every day to be part of their team. Let me also recognize some other folks that are here this morning. Dan Clayman. Dan has been in addition to being our award winner today, he's been a friend and a mentor to me. Mike Siddick from the Florida League of Cities back there. Mike is the type of guy that always comes up to you and says, what can I do for you? How can I help? How can I make Florida a better state and a better city manager community? And let me thank all the managers from Florida that come here today also to support. They have supported me throughout the years. They've been friends, colleagues, and confidants. And finally, let me recognize my partner, Stacy Stand, and my daughter, Caitlin. My other daughters, Samantha and Elizabeth, could not join us today as school and work kept them at home and away. We all know that we cannot be effective in our chosen profession without the support and love of our families. Mine is no exception, and I thank you all and love you dearly for the support that you give me every day. I also want to say my thanks to Bob O'Neill, who's been a great executive director for our association, but also a great thought leader in our profession and a great friend to many of us. Bob, you know that you've made that lasting impression on us all, and we wish you best in the next chapter. You and Karen will always have a special place in our hearts. This is usually the opportunity for the incoming president to talk about his or her program for the coming year. As I told the board when I first interviewed with them, I have no new program to introduce this year, but rather I plan on using this year to work with our new executive director, Mark Ott. And again, Mark, congratulations, well deserved. To partner with Mark on continuing our important work on strengthening inclusiveness of both race and gender in our profession, on continuing our important work on fostering leadership in our profession, and adopting our new strategic plan. I need to give a shout out to San Antonio's City Manager Cheryl Scully and Triangle J Council Executive Director, Council Government Executive Director Lee Worsley. By the way, I think it's Lee's birthday this morning, so if you see him, wish him well, for their leadership in the process, and the entire strategic planning task force for their hard work and dedication. And I know I speak for the board when I say we are looking forward to adopting that new strategic plan in the coming months. So then what should I talk about this morning? I asked the local government fellows that work for the city of Fort Lauderdale what they wanted to hear. Let me ask them to stand and be recognized, those fellows from Fort Lauderdale. So, I do that so I can actually see that they showed up this morning. And they gave me a lot of ideas, most of which I ignored, but the common denominator was whatever you say is just fine, just please don't embarrass us. And let me ask all the other local government fellows to stand as well this morning and be recognized. These are among our new crop. These are our new crop of engaged leaders in local government. They are the next generation. And for those who know my professional history, I completed 5 internships in 4 cities. And yes, I had to actually repeat one, okay? But a city manager by the name of Bill McGill and his assistant city manager, Mike Roberto, took a gamble on me and brought me full-time to the city of North Miami Beach. Now, 31 years later, I stand before you, and I implore you, every member in this hall today, to go home and create an opportunity for our next round of leaders. Sponsor a fellowship, work with a student chapter, and create those opportunities that were created for each of us. Now I'm going to emphasize in the next few minutes 3 words, and you'll hear them throughout the year as I travel around to meet you in your regions and your states. Those words are passion, challenge, and legacy. First, passion. We all have a passion for the profession. We show that in the 3,031 counties, 19,522 municipalities, 16,664 townships in the United States. and the many more around the globe. We show that 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It is what makes us thrive and excel. It promotes understanding and empathy. It allows us to manifest our days to build community. However, sometimes our passion is tested, challenged, or muted by the politics of our national scene. With only 41 days left, can you believe that, 41 left, to the presidential election, the discourse of the role of government at all levels seems to ruminate beneath the rhetoric. We, the 11,000 plus members of ICMA, the leaders at the core of Better Communities, need to keep our passion for our profession ignited and burning strong. The way I do this is to listen to the stories about our members, one which I will share with you now, the story of Yvonne Kimball. I don't know how many of you know Yvonne, but she's only been in the United States since 2003. You see, she was born in Tianjin, China. She saw firsthand what life was like without democracy as she grew up in the later years of the Mao dictatorship. And when Yvonne was a teenager, she was able to get her hands on a book, a banned book, of great speeches of the Western world. And it was Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It's something we all learned in grade school, that she read. And he spoke then of the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that resonated with her so much that in 2003, she immigrated to the United States and she enrolled in the University of Central Florida's MPA program. And I had an opportunity to work with Yvonne when she interned in our office in Palm Bay. Now, 5 years later, in 2008, just 5 years after receiving that master's degree and immigrating to the United States, she became city manager of Bowling Green, Florida. And then in 2011, she moved west and became town manager of Dewey Humboldt, Arizona. Now, these are her words. I was stunned but deeply inspired by the concept and wanted to become part of such a noble institution one day. Local governments are much closer to the citizens than the federal government. I knew I would have a better chance to make a difference by working for local governments. She emigrated from China to here, heeding those words of Abraham Lincoln, so that she could have a better chance to make a difference working at local government. Now that's passion. That's what we have to maintain. Now, Yvonne couldn't be here today, but I want her to know that her passion, her words are what inspire me every day. Second word, challenge. Let me share the words of Robert F. Kennedy testifying before a Senate committee just over 50 years ago, almost to the day. He said, "The city is not just housing and stores. It's not just education and employment, parks and theaters, banks and shops. It is a place where men should be able to live in dignity and security and harmony, where the great achievements of modern civilization and the ageless pleasures afforded by natural beauty should be available to all. If this is what we want, and this is what we must want, if men are to be free for that pursuit of happiness, which was the earliest promise of the American nation, we will need more than poverty programs, housing programs, and employment programs. Although we will need all of these, we will need an outpouring of imagination, ingenuity, discipline, and hard work, unmatched since the first adventurers set out to conquer the wilderness. For the problem is the largest we have ever known, and we confront an urban wilderness more formidable and resistant, and in some ways more frightening than the wilderness faced by the pilgrims or pioneers. And that is our challenge today. Our communities, now 50 years more mature, are faced by those same issues that we were in 1966. But now they're more complicated by the 24-hour news cycle, more extreme weather events, and incidents of mass violence that are occurring more and more frequently. And this challenge falls squarely upon us in local government here and around the world. Due to the current dysfunction of our federal government, with many of our state governments not far behind, exhibiting the similar traits of functionality, local government has become the champion for our nation. From the war on terrorism to the war on opiate abuse, from the crumbling infrastructure to stalled transportation initiatives, it is the leaders in this hall today and the many staff that we have back home that are delivering the core services that our communities rely upon every day. We truly are, we are life well run. Kennedy called upon us for an outpouring of imagination, ingenuity, discipline, and hard work. That calling is as relevant today as was back then, and your association, ICMA, is here to partner with you. Our leadership in the areas of fostering sustainable communities, public safety, leadership development, and performance analytics has made us the go-to resource for effective community building globally. However, it cannot be ICMA staff or the board working on this alone. We really need an active and engaged membership, and that means you. So please consider during our next call for volunteers to join one of our 15 task forces, advisory boards, or committees. Let's give our President-elect David Johnstone from Candiac, Quebec, Canada, 3 times the number of names that I had for making these appointments to the important and hardworking committees. Together, let's meet the tumultuous challenge of our communities. Finally, legacy. George Hambury, who is president of Nova Southeastern University, and a former city manager of 3 communities, 2 in Virginia and 1 in Florida, and a friend of ICMA, often quotes a Greek proverb: "A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in." As leaders at the core of better communities, we need to keep our eyes focused on the long term when there's so much pressure for us to get instantaneous results. Our conference, and let me thank again our planning, evaluation, and host committees for a great conference, had many sessions devoted to civic engagement, building trust, becoming a smart city, and changing our world. Our conferences and other training provide us with the building blocks for our legacy. And our legacy to our children and their children must be more than the bricks and mortar of buildings, the quality of roads and pipes, and the shades of trees. We must leave a personal legacy in our community of positive civil discourse, inclusion of diverse neighbors, and a level of tolerance that is unprecedented in the history of our country. Dan Clayman, Ted Gabler, Jan Perkins are distinguished service award winners today. They are inspirations for us all to follow in building legacy. As I close my remarks this morning and reflect on all the turmoil that is around us every day, I take solace in the words of wisdom from the elders of the Hopi Nation. You've been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour, and there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where's your water? Know your garden. It is time to speak your truth, create your community, be good to each other, and do not look outside yourself for the leader. This could be a good time. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there will be those who are afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel that they are torn apart and suffer greatly. Know the river has its destination. The elders say that we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above water. And I say, see who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. The time for the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Thank you.
Thank you for those very thoughtful remarks, Lee. I look forward to continuing on the board under your great leadership, and I look forward to being able to support you in what I know will be a very, very successful year ahead. It's now my pleasure